NaptownTuner here. Look, we're working on a 2009 plus, all the way up to about 2016 2.0 liter turbocharged direct injected tfsi Audi engine. It somewhat applies to VW. They put their engines in sideways when the 2 liters. Okay, let's get started. Let's say you want to replace this 2.0 liter TFSI engine in this Audi A4. I'm going to show you step by step how to do it. Okay, let's start taking stuff apart. NaptownTuner didn't learn this stuff overnight, so stick with me and you're going to learn the most efficient way to work on this thing. Let's check out the first step. See this cowl right here? Yeah, let's pull it out by just pulling this tab right here. You just stick your hand underneath it and pop it up. Okay, when you pop it up, that's gonna come off and you're gonna put it right back where it came from on this stud. You're gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm working with one hand and I'm holding the other hand with the camera, so I'm not gonna be able to do things as quite efficiently as I can. So like I said, you just pull it up, this comes off, you put it right back on the stud. Okay, you've got this rubber insulator grommet thing here for the hood. You take that off, throw it to the side, and then you just kind of jiggle this thing and pull this cowl up and out of the place, right? Now we gotta take the battery loose, all right? We go to the battery box in the front. There's a little trap door here. We open it up. There's a 13 millimeter, a 10 millimeter, and then another 10 millimeter, okay? When we get those loose, then we're gonna take this brace off. There's a 13 millimeter right here. There's a 13 millimeter right here and right here. Then we take this 10 millimeter out. This 10 millimeter out, this 10 millimeter out. We cut this wire tie, okay? We pop these clips up, and there's a few clips on the back here that we pop out of place. And then this hose right here, we pop out of place. We take this vacuum hose and we disconnect that clamp, and then we pop that hose out of place, okay? There's a few heater hose lines, and I'm gonna show you those whenever I get to them. Now I'm gonna show you an expanded view, and I'm gonna do all that work that I just showed. Okay, 13 millimeter main power wire. Pick the wire up, put the nut back on the stud. When you're still on 13, go ahead and take these side supports off. There's only one on this side, and there's two 13 millimeter nuts on the other side. Put all these nuts in steps is what I do. That'll be for a different video, but as you take things apart, you have a compartment and then you put the nuts and the bolts in the compartment. So there's 2 nuts right here. Right, this is the support bar that goes across both strut towers. Okay, now we're done with 13 millimeter for now. We're switching over to 10 millimeter. We can go ahead and get these, we can go ahead and get these 3 10 millimeters right here. Remember, there's a wire tie on right here. Sometimes there's one a little bit lower. You have to cut those. Okay. Go ahead and cut that wire tie I was talking about for the loom. All right, there's a couple other up there that we have to cut. Let's go ahead and cut those. There's the 10 millimeter right here to get this box loose from that brace that we already got loose. And that will be the last screw on that brace, and then we can pull that brace out of there. So what happens is there's 10 millimeter in this box right here that we're taking loose. And then there's this wire right here with a connector. There's a little tab on the bottom of it. You can pop the tab down and then slide this off. Take a closer look at it. It's a little trigger right here. You push it down and then you slide this loose if you don't want to break your tabs. And then there's a little locking tab right here. You slide the red trigger back and then you push it down like normal and it pulls back. All right. And then there's 2 zip ties on the back of there. Someone already cut these, but the zip ties go right there and there. Someone's already had this apart. And honestly, that's a good sign because that means that it might have had pistons replaced. So then there's another wire right here that is a little clip that you have to disconnect, and then we're taking this off and chucking it to the side. Now we have the vacuum hose. All right, I like to take it apart on the inside clamp. So what I do sometimes is I just take like this, and because I replace these. Honestly, with this is just a vacuum hose. I just replace this with a zip tie. So after you snap that, you can pull it off. It didn't come off the way I wanted it to because I'm doing this with one hand. But then if it comes off like that, you can just put a little bit of lube on this part and then just wiggle it back into place right there. Right, I didn't even need to put lube on it. And then whenever you put it back together, it's super easy. Okay, moving on. Okay, so when you went back over to the 10 millimeter, there's one more 10 millimeter nut in this electrical box. Then you have the wiring that's gonna be free like this, okay? Then there's gonna be a couple more panel clips on the back here on this removable firewall that you take this tool here and you pop the clips off, right? And then the wiring comes over here, right here. There's gonna be a couple more clips right here and right here. You just take the panel tool and you pop it loose, okay? And then we move over here. In this wiring connector, there's a little clip right here. And then there's another clip on the frame rail down here. And you pop it loose right from right here. And then you can't take this part any more loose because there's a 13 millimeter ground connector that we have to get from the bottom. But once we get that 13 millimeter ground, we can take this power wire and we can pull it all the way through the bottom, okay? The next step is we have our low pressure fuel hose. Okay, it's right here. How you get this fuel hose loose is you pull back some of this. Let me clip it back into place so I can show you. You hear it snap into place. Whenever you clip it back into place, you want to hear it snap, and then you want to try to pull on it and see if it comes loose. But anyway, we have a plastic trigger here. What we want to do is we want to push it into itself, then we want to pull the plastic trigger back, and then we just want to pull the hose out. All right, easy as that. We have the evap hose right here with the spring clamp. All right, you want to take your spring pliers, your Knipex spring jaw pliers, and you want to slide the spring clamp back, and then you want to take your panel clip and push the hose back, and then the hose pops right off. Let me get you a better view from up here just so you can see what we're doing here. So we got the fuel hose off, we got one of the evap hoses off, and then follow this other evap hose. See how it has a big plastic line on it? We're gonna take it loose all the way over here at this connector right here. And all we're gonna do is we're just gonna twist it and it's gonna come out. Then we already took that loose, remember earlier? Okay, all these hoses right here are loose. The only thing else we have to do is take the coolant out so that we can take this removable firewall out with the heater hose lines up here. Okay, so you take the oil cap off and then you can pop one of these lines off for the coolant bottle, or you can take the cap off. I prefer to take one of these hoses off, and then I'll show you I'll show you how to take that clip off. So let's lift the vehicle up and get the coolant out and get the oil out. Now we're gonna take this splash pan off and change the oil. Then we're gonna take the coolant out. Let's go. You see this? T25. It'll make this thing drop in 2 seconds. Check it out. There's one right here, one right here, one right here. In the back here. You do not need to pull these all the way out. Someone took the rubber grommets out, but these are supposed to have a rubber grommet on the other side and they're supposed to stay in place. These all come out whenever you take them out, for instance. And let me just show you. When you put these back in, you put them back in not with a power tool, but with a T25 hand tool. You see their twist lock. Moving on.
When you drain the oil, you always want to use eye protection. Check it out. Yes. Eye protection.
Now we're gonna drain the coolant. You see, it normally looks like this. Take a look. Let me focus. See that little nipple right there and that little valve? Okay. I got this hose right here. See that hose? And I got a pair of pliers, right? All right. So what I do is I put this hose right here and then I get a couple jugs. I like these glass jugs that I get milk from. And instead of returning them, I just use them for crafty things like this. And then I take my Nip-X pliers here and I carefully pull down and twist. See, maybe you need to spin the pliers around. It's better to use a small pair of pliers. These are jumbo pliers for this job. But take a look. You just and then as you spin that valve, it's gonna fill both of those jugs. And then take a look at how far that valve is out. That's all you do. If you pull it too far, it's gonna gush out. You're gonna drop it, you might lose it. You just have to be really slow and delicate with pulling down, and spinning, okay? You pull down and spin at the same time with a small pair of pliers. Next step. Somebody already had this front bumper off whenever I purchased this vehicle, okay? I don't take the front bumper off whenever I pull this engine out. I'm gonna show you how to take this engine out without taking the front bumper off. I'll take the front bumper off in a different video. Our first step after taking the coolant out is taking this metal support beam out. You see the X right there? You see that big support beam? There's gonna be 6 bolts. Let me show you to them. Now, these are gonna be 18 millimeter. Sometimes you're gonna need to use a breaker bar because these are on the bottom of the vehicle and they get rust and grime in them. Take a look. We've got this one, the one right here. We've got these 2 right here. And then on the other side, these 2 right here. But before you get those out, there's this power steering line right here and it has a 10 millimeter nut right here on the top. You see that? Right here. Okay, so we take that 10 millimeter out, push this up, and then we take those bolts out. I'm gonna do it right now. We're gonna try our battery stuff first. 10 millimeter. You see, this nut on here was giving me trouble, and sometimes it binds up real bad. Sometimes it binds up real bad and twists this rubber insulator off. That's not a good idea. You want to you want to put a pair of pliers on that and or the correct wrench size, and then get the 10 millimeter off, so you save this rubber insulator, so then your power steering hose can be secure whenever you put it back together. Now, whenever you take this 10 millimeter nut off, you want to take the hose off, and then you want to screw the 10 millimeter back on. This is going to be a reoccurring theme for some of the nuts and bolts. Next step. Now I'm going to support it with my head. Now there's a couple little guards up here on the inner fender. See this 10 millimeter right here where my finger is? You take this 10 millimeter out, and then there's one on the other side of that half shaft. So we're gonna pull this one out, and then we're gonna come over to this side, and we're gonna pull this one out. You see, it might be easier if you turn the wheel, but you don't need to. And then what you do is you take this little ear and then you pull it back. You see that? And then you pull it down. And then you take your hand on the other side, if you can see, and you do the same thing. You pull it back and down. And you see how it popped out of place now? It just rolls out. Then you take this piece right here and you're gonna pull it out. And then see this little inner fender attachment piece right here. This is one of those push pins. In a second, I'm gonna show it to you. You pull the push pin out, all right? And then the inner fender pops out, see? And then what you do is you pull it over the sway bar. And then that's gonna give you access to your motor mount bolt. Your motor mount bolt's right there. Money, money. It's the same process on the other side, so do the exact same thing, and then I'm gonna show you how to get the motor mount bolts out. The engine mount bolt, or the motor mount, is gonna look like this, okay? It's a triple square. You see that? But it's also a size 18, okay? If you scroll back a little bit, or if you remember, the power steering hose on the driver's side, that's the more difficult side because that hose is partially obstructing that. Okay, so it's a lot easier to use the triple square. The triple square size is 14 millimeter. Okay, I like to use something heavy duty like this big 1/2-inch drive, and then I like to move to my faster tool, a 3/8, okay, with a 3/8 bit. Okay, you repeat that process on the other side. Check it out. We're over here on the exhaust side. Remember this power cable that we were disconnecting? We have a 13 millimeter. It's gonna be a cap nut up here. Take a look at it. Sometimes you're gonna wanna take that off with a wrench because it might be tight clearance, okay? Then you can pull it off the frame right here, see that? And then you come around right here there's a red locking tab. Take your thumb, pull the tab back, see that? And then you press up and back, and then you pull it loose. And then you take that connector and you pull it out right here like that, okay? Now, we have some wire ties, but before we get to those wire ties, let's get this out of the way. This is our boost hose coming off the turbo. It's a 7mm. We got a ratchet and a wrench right here. So it's all the way up here. You see that? I'm gonna get a different angle for you. You see that there? Okay, I'm gonna get that loose and I'm gonna pull the hose off and I'm gonna go to the next step. Just wiggle and pull it down, but you have to get it sufficiently off, about 6 full turns. And then you're gonna take this hose right here and you're gonna pull it on the other side, all right? And then we're gonna get to these wire ties. So you take your side cuts and you're gonna cut 1, 2, 3. And those wire ties right here, 3 of them perfectly in the right spot. I know for a fact that this engine has never been out now, because there's no way anyone has ever put that back together perfectly with those exact wire ties in that exact location. Certain things you catch on like that. All right, so right now I'm pulling the wiring out. That 13mm that we got on the frame, that was the ground. The rest of this, these two right here, these are the hot wires. And then this right here goes to your cooling fan up front. All right, so we just lay this to the side, okay? Now, since we're here, we can disconnect your motor mount bolt, and then we have the oil level sensor right here. So we can push in on that and disconnect that. And then here's a little clip right here, we can pull that loose. And then there's a recirc valve. Let me get you a better view now. All right, now you have the recirculation valve. And then you have your boost pressure solenoid. And then you can pop this from the turbo right here, okay? And then the rest of it you get from the top. You'll pull this from the top. Continuing with the wiring, over here by the AC compressor, you have a oil pump regulation valve connector right here that you just unclip. And then if you follow this over here, this is your AC compressor. And then you'll unclip that one, and then you'll take your panel clip and you'll pull that. Now you're just gonna leave this wiring here and you're gonna pull that from the top as well. You do not need to disconnect this, and you do not need to disconnect anything back here. Now we're gonna move to these lines right here that are your transmission lines. Now let's take a look up here if we can see this. Okay, moving up from your oil pan and directly below the crankshaft pulley, the harmonic balancer, we have a 10mm right there. You see it's a little bit tricky and the camera's not gonna zoom in on it very well. I'm looking at it because I'm keeping the core support in the position, all right? You can even the bumper could have been on here and everything, all right? I'm showing you how to get the engine out without moving the core support into service position. So you take that 10mm out, and then you come over to this side, right? Okay, so the camera's not gonna zoom into this other one, but there's a 10mm on the very top of the lines right here, right after the jog. It's just right there, right below the engine support. Poke around with it, feel it, there it is right there, you see? Oh. When you get both of those 10mm bolts out, you should be able to do this with the oil cooler lines. They should be free. Now it's time to get the torque converter bolts out. Check it out. You pop that out. Now we're gonna spin the engine over, get 3 triple square bolts out of here, and then we're gonna move on to these 3 triple square 16s. With a wrench, we're gonna get this 16 millimeter out of the bottom of the starter, and then we're gonna get that 18 millimeter out of the ear of the block. First, I'm gonna take my 24 millimeter on a 1/2 inch drive ratchet, and I'm gonna put it up in here and put it on the harmonic balancer. You see, I'm gonna spin it on there and it's gonna barely fit, and then I'm gonna use that to crank the engine over so that I can get to my torque converter bolts. There's my first torque converter bolt. It's a 16 millimeter. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a wrench, and then if you just put it on the bolt there and then roll it back, all right, you wanna get a good leverage angle like this right here. Now you're just gonna pull your weight back there. See how it broke loose? All right, that's how NaptownTuner does it. All right, now that it's broke loose, you can get it out the rest of the way by hand. Okay, that's one, there's 3 of them. All right, put those in safe keepings. All right. See, there's one right there. All right. You get the idea. Don't you worry, I'm gonna do all the rest of it. It's gonna be in part 2, okay? Part 2. This was part 1. In part 2, we're gonna have the engine out on a crane, okay? We're gonna put it on an engine stand. We're gonna take a look at it on NaptownTuner.